Trek to Yomi is a game that came out from Flying Wild Hog and was published by Devolver Digital. It dropped May 5th, 2022, not too long ago actually, and dropped day and date on Game Pass. The footage you are seeing here is me recorded from my Xbox Series X. Do yourself a favor if you're going to play this game. Get yourself a really nice OLED display, so you can really appreciate the rich darks in this game. It is a black and white game, obviously, but with the enhanced OLED display, getting true black on some of these really awesome silhouette combat scenes, and the way the fires and the way the gates of Yomi all kind of surround you, it's going to look so much better. I played it on both my PC and on my Xbox, and while my Xbox definitely struggled with the frame rate side of things, it more than made up with the OLED display. Now, this is a side-scrolling action game that has bits and pieces of fixed camera angle 3D exploration. And you're going to play as a young samurai named Hiroki. And Hiroki is going to go through one hell of a journey, pun intended, to find out just what kind of man he is. I'm not going to get into spoilers until the end of this video. I will specify when they are. I will just leave it at that you need to understand this is about a man's journey to find out who he really is. Now, a lot of people have criticized this game for a litany of reasons, and unfortunately, I do agree with many of them. I'm going to do my best to talk about the good and the bad in this review, so I'm not biased, obviously. I've just played it on Game Pass. I would have bought it anyway. I'm a huge fan of Devolver Digital. I was going to buy this game anyway when I found out it was coming to Game Pass. I'm like, cool, he saved me 15 bucks, but I had already decided I wanted to buy it. I love samurai culture. I have a kanji Japanese symbol tattooed on my arm. I'm a huge fan of the samurai and of their creed and the code of Bushido and everything about them. So this game just spoke to me already just by the subject matter. But it's not for everyone. And a lot of criticism really stems from the fact that the game was too hard. Now, the game does offer 3 modes, actually a 4th when you beat the first 3, I guess, essentially, or any of the 3. And I gotta say that, to me, it wasn't hard. It was very spammy, and it was very easy once you found a move you liked. For me, it was up XX. Up XX got me through, I'm gonna say, 80% of this game, until I unlocked down XXXX, which deleted the last 20% of the enemies with relative ease. Now, you'll sprinkle in some ranged abilities. You're going to get throwing knives, you're going to get bow and arrow, and you're going to get this really heavy-duty shotgun type weapon, like a rifle. Those are great to sprinkle in combat, but while you can parry and roll, and it really just, for me, came down to walking up to an enemy, blocking. As soon as he was done attacking, spamming my one of 2 moves of doom, rinse and repeat. And I gotta admit that the combat got very stale very instantly. And that's definitely a criticism of the game, but I never felt that it was hard. It was just spammy. I would say I died less than 10 times. The times I did die, typically I had enemies jumping in on each side of me simultaneously and pinning me in, and once you're pinned in, there's really no way to bypass an enemy short of blocking an attack and rolling around them. You can't actually like dive through them or anything. You're kind of stuck. So thankfully the enemies do kind of just stand around patiently and wait to fight you one-on-one, and so this game does have a very big cheese factor to it. Another reason why I didn't think it was all that difficult, to be honest, but yeah, you're going to be able to maneuver through the battlefield very easily. It's just going to be those few instances where you get stuck. You will fight a boss at the end. The boss fights are pretty fair. They telegraph their moves. They only have a very limited move set, and same with the enemies you fight. As a matter of fact, you're only going to fight 3 different races, if you want to think of that, of enemies. They have very similar move sets. Where you run into trouble is when you have a ranged enemy way off on the periphery. shooting at you while you're dealing with an enemy closer to you. And that does create some frustration, absolutely. There are a lot of moves in this game, though. If you want to get into that, there are light attacks and heavy attacks and crazy combinations of, you know, press up and X and then up and Y and then back and Y, and you'll pull off some crazy move. I never needed it. You might feel like it's important to check them all out, but honestly, I found my moves that I liked and I stuck to them, and I was very successful with that. I beat the game in about, I'm going to say about 5 hours, a little over 5 hours maybe. I played through it in one session. I did run into a couple glitches. Notably, the audio dialogue in times just stops. This game is entirely spoken in Japanese, which I love. There are subtitles which you can read perfectly fine. The problem I had was there were times I would, not through skipping the dialogue would just abruptly stop. And thankfully I could read it. But it was these long pauses of just silence, because the way the Japanese language is spoken is definitely more verbose than the English language. So you're looking at, you know, a simple sentence for way too long. You probably can read it 3 or 4 times while you're waiting for the game to catch up. That was stupid and frustrating. I didn't like that, and it made me upset, because this game otherwise had a really nice level of polish to it. Like I said, there's some cheese in there for sure. You can definitely get those indie game vibes. You don't get any real new weapons outside of your just basic katana and those 3 ranged weapons that I spoke of. And while you do get a couple combos that you can play with, that's pretty much the game. They're really laying on the stylization, and I think they nailed the stylization because it's gorgeous. In both the side-scrolling areas where you're fighting enemies, whether it be on a bridge or the silhouette of some flames behind you, or inside an old pagoda, or many other places you will explore, the combat looks gorgeous. And the lighting and the mood is absolutely set. There's a lot of stuff in the foreground that blocks the image, which is really, really nice as well, which prevents you from seeing the whole picture, but it gives you a much more immersive feel. There are areas, as I mentioned, out of combat where you're walking around where the camera is fixed. I love the fixed camera angle because it really can set a tone and a mood. My biggest gripe with some of these exploration areas is the camera is way too far out. I understand they're trying to set a sense of scale and magnitude, and some of the places you are larger than life themselves. And for that, absolutely make your camera very far away and make your character feel very small. But it happened far too often. I wanted to zoom in more and see the detail on my character. I wanted to see what Hiroki was wearing and what he was doing, his facial expressions when he's talking. You never see any of that because it's so far away. And it was a little frustrating because there is a beautiful world to see here, but sometimes it was so zoomed out you really couldn't even see the detail of the world. And that frustrated me quite a bit. There is a light sense of exploration where you will find stamina and health pickups that will permanently increase your character's armor, or you know, how much damage, not so much how much damage you can take or how much stamina you have, which to me was armor because I would spam block to stay alive. So to me, I was just absolutely synonymous with my armor rating. But you will also find little items in the world, little pieces of lore you can read if you want to. I read a few of them. I didn't really feel that in love with the surrounding lore of the world. I was more interested in Hiroki's story himself to see exactly where it was going to go, and that was what captivated me. I didn't really feel like I needed to take time to read through the items, but there's some stuff there to find. There's some, like I said, very light exploration, very light puzzle solving. There's a couple instances where you can set off a trap which will kill enemies so you don't have to fight them, like cutting a bridge or something, and they fall to their death as opposed to climbing up on the bridge to fight them. These areas are pretty easy to find. There's not a whole lot of mystery of like, where am I supposed to go next? Again, because of the fixed camera, it's very clear what you're supposed to do. There are some little optional areas to see, but like I said, for the most part, it's a pretty linear game. And I liked that it was kind of straight and to the point. I wish it was a little shorter. I definitely felt like before the finale, the game definitely lagged on quite a bit. And while they do give you choices in the game a couple times, it's only the last choice that truly matters. that's what's going to determine what your ending is going to be. The other two choices didn't really seem to have that much levity to them, and actually I changed my mind halfway through. So I started off as like a real hard ass, and then by the end I was like, that's not really the way I want to play. I actually have a different mindset now. Not so much because of just playing the game a certain way, but the way the choice was presented to me is kind of like in a different facet. And it made me think, okay, actually, I feel this way instead. So I veered off very differently than my first two choices. Maybe you could say that my trek to Yomi changed me as a man. I started off with a cold, vengeful heart, but by the end, I found love. You know what I mean? Maybe you could argue that. I don't know. It definitely does overstay its welcome. I said like a little bit, though. I wish it was just a little bit shorter. And definitely major complaint on the Xbox Series X, which is the premier console, right? This game did not run as well as it should have. As a matter of fact, at times, it reminded me of Robot Chicken. That really janky frame rate. It was consistent, but very janky. And it took me out of the element of being enwrapped in the world. And I don't know if there's a memory leak in this game, or it's because I don't know why it was, but definitely towards the end of the game, it got progressively worse. Now, there's a lot more effects going on towards the end of the game. A lot more, different types of smoke and fire and density and particle effects, which are gorgeous to look at. But this game should not struggle to run at 60 frames a second, and it did constantly. So much so that in the brief interior areas where it did run at 60 frames per second, my mind was blown. I was like, oh, this is what it's really supposed to look like. I still maintain, though, you're better off with a subpar frame rate with an OLED display as on a TV, like on a console. If there are OLED gaming monitors, I'm sure there are out there. If you could get the best of both worlds with a solid performance, 60 frames a second with an OLED display, you would be in love. But unfortunately, I made a choice there, and that's the choice that I stuck with. Before I get into the spoiler part of the review, I just want to wrap up here by saying that I did like this game, and I do recommend it. Obviously, I got it for free, so take that with a grain of salt. I mean, not that I get Game Pass for free, but take that with a grain of salt that it did have a very cool concept. I love the sound design. I absolutely adored the art. And I think it did a really good job of kind of setting the mood for a samurai warrior. But the story itself definitely left me kind of scratching my head. And at this point, I'm going to jump over into spoilers. So if you haven't yet had a chance to play this game and you don't want to know what happens, exit stage left. For everybody else, I want to talk to you guys a little bit about my ending and my thoughts on the story. The fact that Hiroki dies so early on was something that I was definitely not expecting. I will readily admit that it did kind of catch me off guard, the way he died so quickly. The way the game presents his story and his sacrifice was a little odd. The way I understood it, he was in a town, and a neighboring town was under attack, and he went to help. While he was helping the neighboring town, the enemy countered and attacked his town, slaughtering many, many people. When he comes back and ultimately dies to the big bad, the villain of this game, in his own town, he is shamed because he feels as if he let his own town down. And the whole game surrounds itself around this concept of redemption. And I've got to admit, in kind of playing it, I didn't feel that way. I felt like he was doing the noble thing by trying to save a neighboring town. But the way the game frames it, it's like, well, you left your own village, how dare you? And because you left your own village, your girlfriend dies and your sensei dies, and you lose your sense of duty and love and honor. And it was just a cutscene 5 minutes before in the previous level where you're talking with your girlfriend, and she's basically telling you, hey, if this other town falls, we're going to fall too. We need to get out there and help. So I'm not sure where this disconnect occurs, but it was very odd that it was almost a tale that kind of like retconned itself halfway through, and the writing was sloppy because of that. Now, Hiroki, in actually failing the mission, despite how he actually failed, still was some redemption to me. And working his way through Yomi and fighting these demons and fighting his own demons to finally understand that he is going to be one of three things, I felt like made the choice a little bit more fun. Initially, I chose this kind of fury and revenge mode. Essentially, get me out of here, put me back in the real world, coach. I want to kill everything and everyone. I will take what is mine. And the game definitely did not like that choice that I made. It was very aggressively telling me that's not the right thing. You need to be more compassionate, and you need to have love, or you need to have duty, but you can't be all three things. You can have love, you could have duty, or you could have raw fury, but not all three. And I've got to admit, understanding the samurai culture and understanding the code of Bushido, I definitely disagree with that take. It's very possible for a balanced samurai to have all of those things, to have love, to have duty, and to have that battlefield fury. So again, why the game made you choose one of the three and not all three was very bizarre to me. And I did choose fury both of the 2 times leading up to the final choice. As far as I can tell, those mid-choices didn't make a whole lot of difference in terms of what I did. As far as I can tell and what I've read online, it wasn't like a radical character appearance. It wasn't like a radical overhaul of the lore or of anything else. It was just a kind of meaningless choice. The final choice, when you actually are returned to your body through the spirit to get another chance, that is where you get to determine your ending. The love ending, you go off with your girlfriend in the afterlife. The duty ending, where you kill the big bad and decide to stay alive and defend the village and continue to train people. Or the revenge ending, where you kill the big bad and then decide to conquer the world, apparently. I took the duty ending. It felt a little more meaningful to me at the end, just based on the experiences I had been in. But I will admit in going back and kind of going through all of the story elements again, some of the story just didn't quite add up to me entirely. So with that, I'm going to close out my review for Trek to Yomi. I enjoyed the game, despite the fact that the plot was a little bit out there. I hope you guys found this video interesting and informative. Thank you so much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.